This is the Wednesday morning, April 8th, 2020 morning session of the Portland City Council. Good morning, Carla, wherever you are. Could you please call the roll?
Good morning, Mayor. Hardesty.
Here.
Udaley.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of council are attending remotely by phone, and the city has made several avenues available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The public can also provide written testimony to council by emailing the council clerk at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov, cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and promote social distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your patience, flexibility, and understanding as we manage through this difficult situation to do the city's business. And with that, I'll turn it over to Robert for the rules of order and decorum. Robert, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the city council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please also be aware that council meetings are recorded. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Carla, first up is communications. Item number 281, please.
261.
261. Thank you, Carla. Sorry.
Sure, no problem. 261, request of Mike O'Callahan to address council regarding increasing housing stock.
Hello there, Michael Callahan here. Thanks for this opportunity. I want to start out by thanking all the people that are making masks, all the people that are working in grocery stores, the field workers, and the truckers. We're in some unusual times, as you know, and I'm running for mayor, as you probably know, and we have a bottom-up decision-making process that we would like to implement. We have a number of ideas, 4 of them for housing, 4 of them for clean air. Go to Mayor Mike OC on Facebook and check them out. Eugene is actually doing, as we speak, villages, which is one of our ideas. They have 10 people in their village. Maybe we can copy what they're doing. Anyway, like I said, we're in a pretty unusual situation now. And so what to do about it, okay? One thing that is really quite clear, should be to everybody, is that we are enslaved by financial institutions, okay? Most of our efforts go to rent, whether you're a renter or whether you're a landlord, whatever, okay? And that money ultimately goes to financial institutions. So what we need to do now is to stop all rent, mortgage, and foreclosures. 27 states did this in the Depression. And here's the choice. Either the stockholders get a 30 to 50% equity, which we can figure out down the road, or thousands of people in Portland are on the streets and there are lots of vacant homes. This is unacceptable. And I realize that you really don't have the authority to do this, but all of you have a bully pulpit. And if you don't do it in the next month, there are going to be thousands out on the street. Okay, thank you. Okay, now something that you can do in the next session, okay, you can pass a law making it illegal to discard dated food. Okay, people are going hungry now. This food distribution system doesn't reach the people on the bottom. Do this. You can do it emergency right now. I'll look forward to seeing this done. We could feed thousands with a stroke of the pen, just like France and Italy did. And I thank you for the time, and I look forward to some action on this stuff, because if you don't, you know what's going to happen. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Stay healthy, everybody. Aloha.
Thank you. Item number 262, please, Carla.
Request of Mary Helen Kincaid to address council regarding the Outstanding Special District Program Award.
Hello, and thank you all for taking the time to hear this testimony. It's a very difficult time, and everybody's doing heroic deeds to keep us safe and healthy. And I wanted to express my appreciation for those efforts. Today, I want to provide you with some good news, but it's also sort of pertinent to what's going on now. I've been associated with the Peninsula 2 Drainage District of Multnomah County Drainage District for over 5 years. I'm very impressed with the work they've done, that they've been honored for, and they created a very innovative, difficult program to benefit homeless communities. On February 8th, 2020, the Special Districts Association of Oregon recognized the Multnomah County Drainage District and Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare with an Outstanding Special District Program Award for their joint efforts to address safety and infrastructure issues through a houseless outreach and coordination pilot project. The SDAO, the Special Districts Association program, recognizes innovative accomplishments by organizations that improve safety, public information, and involvement in their communities. With limited places to live, houseless communities have resorted to camping along the Columbia River levee, which reaches from North Portland to Troutdale. The increased activity has made it difficult for MCDD field employees to perform regular maintenance work, and in some instances has caused unintentional damage to the levee system, which poses greater flood risk for unhoused communities. Thousands of residents, businesses, and some of our region's most vital resources, including the Columbia South Shore well field and the Portland International Airport, as well as the businesses in the Columbia corridor. In order to address these issues, MCDD and Cascadia formed a collaborative partnership and launched the Houseless Outreach and Coordination Pilot Project in 2019. Through targeted outreach, education, and engagement, the project addresses safety concerns and minimizes damage to flood risk reduction systems, with the added benefit of providing education and support services to individuals experiencing homelessness, as well as serving as a line of communication to vulnerable communities in these low-lying areas during high water events. The program provides the ability for MCDD field crews to work closely with trained social service professionals on the ground and allows MCDD to perform their core job functions while also gaining greater awareness of the conditions of people who are unhoused in the community. In addition to working with social services, the project also incorporates collaboration with other regional service organizations, law enforcement, government agencies, property owners, and the general public. The project has developed a unique technological approach to communicating between these organizations and providing live data.
Time is up.
Can I just finish a little bit?
Yeah, just finish up your final thoughts, Mary Helen.
Okay, this collector app is really unique because it allows sharing of information such as safety concerns, camp locations, estimated number of people, language barriers, and willingness to cooperate. The part I wanted to make an emphasis is that it's really impressive for you to know that this project was solely funded by 4 drainage districts. The 1-year operating costs were $7,500. Yes, $7,500. That breaks down to $441 per person. The drainage district boards have included funding for the project in their budget.
All right.
I'm hoping that when we get through this, that we will be able to work closely to incorporate more of this collaborative effort, because it's unique that it's between private sector and social services. And
agreed. Thank you, Mary Helen, for sharing that. We appreciate it very much. Next individual, Carla, please, item 263.
263, request of James Kincaid to address council regarding the Outstanding Special District Program Award. He will not be speaking today.
All right, 264, please.
Request of Grant Williams to address council regarding a staffing matter with Portland Police Bureau. He also will not be speaking today.
All right, very good. And 265, please.
Request of David G. Gwyther to address council regarding bedbug abatement in home forward buildings.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is David Gwyther, and I was a resident of a building bought by Home Forward about 20 years ago, 929 Southwest Salmon. Recently, they've decided to do a seismic upgrade, and so they've cleared the building completely and will be starting construction whenever the virus situation has changed. Now, this creates a very unique opportunity. This is an old building, at least 100 years old, maybe older, and it has been infested by bed bugs for years. The first time I heard about it, my newest neighbors found bed bugs, and I think they left with just the clothes on their back. They totally panicked and just disappeared one day. They've been chasing the bed bugs around the building for at least 15 and maybe 20 years, which leaves the apartment that they use poison and other sorts of ways to get rid of, clear of bed bugs for a few years or maybe months, but they can come back. And they also, over time, develop an immunity to whatever poison they're using, so they keep having to change that. Now, the opportunity is that the building, to actually get rid of bed bugs, you can put a tent over the building, keep the building rooms up to 122 degrees for 90 minutes, and that'll kill all the bed bugs in the building for good. And if it's done when the building is completely tore apart, it'll get all of their hiding places. They can even hide in light fixtures. It's quite amazing. They're very amazing little creatures. One of the bed bug abatement people told me that he had put one in a jar 4 years ago. It's still alive and can live on just very minimal amount of stuff. One bite can feed a bed bug for a year easily. Anyway, the cost of putting the tent over the building, most of the cost is having to move people out, but the actual cost in this situation be somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000. A program that the city could help finance would allow Home Forward to borrow the funds, do the removal of the bed bugs, and then pay back to the fund the average weekly or monthly costs of the bed bug abatement they've been using in the past. Let's say it's $3,000 to $5,000 a month. They could have it paid back in less than a year, and they'd have solved the problem, and then they could do the next building whenever the seismic upgrade for that happens. The seismic part of it is obviously needed, but the bed bugs are a daily problem, not once every 300 years when the plate off the coast moves and we get a seismic problem. Anyway, this is something that I tried to input to the mayor's office and not be able to receive any feedback at all on it. So if you have any questions, I can answer them, I hope. Thank you for your time.
David, could I ask you a question? Have you raised this with Home Forward? And if so, what was their response?
Okay. I did not raise it with Home Forward. I talked to the bed bug the person that's been doing the bed bug, and he raised it. He explained the whole program in much greater detail than I can, and they just kind of blew him off. They said it wasn't in their budget. They're spending millions of dollars on the seismic upgrade. You'd think they could fit a small amount like this in. But I don't think they want to acknowledge the problem of bed bugs, because that creates a public relations problem if they admit they have them. that since they've been spending money every month to get rid of the bed bugs, they assume that it works.
Okay. So David, let me do this. This is not my area of great expertise, but I can tell it's a significant issue, and it's obviously problematic enough that it caused you to come here today, and we appreciate that. I will forward your concerns to Home Forward. They are, of course, the building manager, but I'd be happy to intervene on your behalf, and I'll make a call to Home Forward, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, David, for
helpful to everybody.
Thanks for being part of our experiment here on communications. We appreciate it.
It's actually easier than coming down to City Hall.
You know, in some regards, it can be, indeed. Thank you for that. Next up is the consent agenda. Carla, have any items been pulled off of the consent agenda?
We've had no request.
Please call the roll on the consent agenda.
Hardesty? Daly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Now we'll go to the regular agenda. The first item is item 269, please.
Appoint Michael Jordan as the City of Portland representative to the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District created by the Oregon State Legislature in 2019.
Colleagues, I'm pleased to recommend the appointment of Mike Jordan, the Environmental Services Director, as the city's representative on the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District. The City of Portland has been an active participant in Levy Ready Columbia, which of course is a partnership between public, private, nonprofit, and neighborhood organizations working to modernize flood safety infrastructure along the Columbia River. In 2019, Levy Ready Columbia worked with the Oregon State Legislature to create an entirely new special district. As designated by Oregon state law, a 17-member board will be charged with developing a new revenue structure to fund the operations of this new district. Here today to talk more about that and his appointment is Mike Jordan. Mike, please take it away, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for this opportunity and this kind of different way of doing business. I apologize for the hat, but I haven't been able to get a haircut for a month and decided to hide it from you rather than force you to look at me. So yes, the city's been involved with Levy Ready Columbia since 2013. And when I came on board at BES in 2015, was asked by then Mayor Hills to represent the city on a number of committees associated with the Levy Ready Columbia Oregon Solutions Project. The big driver behind the new district and what this interim board that you're making this appointment today will be charged with doing is building a new revenue model for the maintenance and capital construction work that needs to happen for the accreditation of the levee system. That's important because without accreditation of the levees, federal flood insurance cannot be acquired within the floodplain. And that, of course, represents a huge issue for not only the city of Portland, but the entire metropolitan region and to some degree the state of Oregon. So what this interim board will be charged with doing is putting together a utility revenue model, along with doing the fundamental foundational planning for this new district to establish the cost basis by which then the utility methodology can be derived to allocate the costs of operation of the new district. The 4 drainage districts that have existed since 1917, I believe, have been using a model for funding that is considered under Oregon law property tax, and therefore it pushes many of the properties into compression. And ironically enough, the public properties which have designated uses and cannot be used for other development have relatively low real market value and under Measure 5, when the cost is allocated to those properties, they go into compression very quickly. The revenue cannot be garnered from them and then is shifted onto the private properties within the floodplain. Not only is that an inadequate way to raise enough money to do the work that needs to be done to accredit the levies, but it's also a very inequitable way of allocating costs. By moving to a utility model, you'll be able to more fairly and equitably allocate the costs necessary to do the work and maintain the levy system without having that compression issue because we won't be using a property tax.
Commissioner Fritz, did you have a question?
No, thank you. Sorry.
No worries.
Well, I'll just wrap up, Mr. Mayor. This interim board, we think will take probably from 2 to 4 years to be able to accomplish the work necessary to establish this new revenue model. And then they will call for the elimination of the old districts, and they'll call for elections of a new board that will be with the permanent board to operate the district for the rest of its future. And so this is I'll say relatively short-term appointment in that I think we can accomplish what needs to be accomplished by this interim board in the next 2 to 4 years. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Commissioner Hardesty has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Michael Jordan. I guess my first question is, were you bored? Something else to do?
No, it just so happens, Commissioner, that I was had the opportunity to sit on a number of these committees, and to be honest, you don't get an opportunity to form a brand new entity very often, and it's fascinating to have all the different players at the table, and it's really been a wonderful experience, to be quite honest. Many people have ideas, obviously, but we're working well together.
Well, I know that you really geek out around this kind of stuff. My question is, how big is this board, and how representative of the community interest will this board be?
The board has 17 members. There are 5 cities which will have appointments: Portland, Gresham, Wood Village, Fairview, and Troutdale. The 4 drainage districts all have members, so there'll be 4 more. So that's 9. Multnomah County, Metro, and the Port of Portland each have an appointment, so that's 12. And then the governor is charged with appointing 5 other members. They need to represent 3 basic groups, if you will: residents, businesses within the floodplain, and then 2 members that represent environmental issues and environmental justice. So altogether, there are 17 members.
Thank you. I couldn't think of a better appointee for this committee because of your years of actually working to make sure that we were going to clean up the Columbia Slough, and just realizing how necessary this is before the big it came, right? We all thought the big it would be an earthquake.
Yeah.
It would be a pandemonium, right? But having said that, you're the right person for this position, and thank you for your willingness to serve, because I can imagine it won't be an easy task force.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Michael, my understanding is that the first order of business for you is to establish a rate structure. Is that correct?
It's one of the first, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, when you're doing a utility type methodology, there needs to be a cost basis to do the allocation from. So the very first thing out of the blocks will actually be doing some high level planning work to establish the cost of doing business under the new statute for the new district. The one difference between the new district and the drainage districts is that the drainage districts could only spend money on the maintenance and operation of the levee system. The new district also has an environmental charge within the statute. So we'll need to do some broad planning to establish that cost basis, and then we can do the allocation methodology of the utility.
And ultimately, how do you pay for that?
Similar to other utilities, you'd take whatever the cost of operation is, allocate it in a number of ways, perhaps. There have been studies done by DOGAMI, the state agency in charge of mineral and industries. They've done a study in the floodplain of the impact, the economic and physical impact of a flood event within the district. So one of the ways to allocate would be how much damage is done to each property and allocate on that kind of a basis. Part of the charge is all surface water through the levee out to the Columbia that falls within the basin. So some of it could be allocated on impervious surface, much the way we do with our stormwater fees for BES. So there are a number of different ways you can allocate, and that's a big part of what the methodology needs to work its way through.
Okay. And I would assume at some point, if you're talking, capital construction to shore up the levees, you're talking about a bond issuance.
The new district would have the authority to put a general obligation bond before the voters. It's probably worth noting for the audience, this district is also larger than just the managed floodplain. It is all of Multnomah County inside the urban growth boundary. One of the reasons for that larger base was just for that, Mr. Mayor, to potentially be able to do a bond issue to distribute those costs. There are obviously many resources within the managed floodplain that many of our residents rely on every day. The airport, 2 interstate or 3 interstate freeways actually, and 59,000 jobs, where many of the folks in the metropolitan area actually have their employment. So the shorter answer is yes, you would be able to do a bond issue. It would have to be voter approved, however.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Any further questions? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty, a second from Commissioner Udaly. Any further discussion? Michael, thank you. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Well, thank you, Michael. I knew that name sounded familiar. I vote aye.
Fritz?
Thank you for all your work on this, Director Jordan. You've been involved in it for a very long time. I really appreciate your leadership on this, and it's certainly the people of Multnomah County and the Drainage District certainly are very well served by having you in charge. Aye.
Wheeler?
Well, Michael, year after year, you've proven to be our very own all-star. Thank you for stepping up once again. I'm proud to vote aye, and the report is accepted. Congratulations, Michael, and I know you'll keep us posted on this.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you for stepping up. We really appreciate it. Next item, Carla, 270, please.
Authorize $100 million of revenue bonds to finance city operations and undertakings in response to the effect of COVID-19.
Colleagues, in the weeks since COVID-19 escalated in the United States, our city has worked tirelessly to address the public health crisis and its resultant economic impacts. We're also being proactive by keeping open every possible option to ensure the stability of our city government and our ability to continue providing core services to Portland residents. The following legislation authorizes the city to enter into a credit facility with its lending partner banks. We're opening a line of credit just in case we need it. While I don't anticipate needing it, I want this council to have all of the tools at its disposal to ensure that we have the financial resources we need during this crisis. A line of credit is a debt instrument. We need to be clear that approval of this resource today does not mean that it should necessarily be used. Taking out any debt is a liability for the city, and we should view it as a backstop of last resort. I'll be consulting closely with our Chief Financial Officer in the coming months to decide whether or not we need to access this resource. I want to be clear, this is for use for managing cash flow issues only. In other words, it would be used as a bridge to a clearly identified and measurable source of revenue that we anticipate coming in the future. The city's debt manager, Matt Gierach, is on the line to present this ordinance, and Chief Financial Officer Michelle Kirby is also on the line. Take it away and thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. This is Matt Gierach, the Debt Manager in the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. To add to the introductory remarks, with the proposed legislation, the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services, through its Debt Management Division, is recommending the issuance of a credit facility to provide temporary funding in the following ways. First, we view this credit facility as a bridge to provide short-term temporary funding to address delays in timing of identifiable and relatively certain revenue collections. Given the temporary reprieve in collections of certain tax revenues, the city should seek to avoid major service disruptions because of temporary delays in cash flow. We highlight that this credit facility is not a solution to solve foregone revenues that the city will simply not see because of declines in economic activity. Rather, it should be thought of as a short-term liability that augments our cash balance. One example of an acceptable scenario for usage of the line of credit would be for federal reimbursement of expenditures for emergencies. Having immediate access to credit would remove barriers in immediately spending disaster relief resources because of timing issues with receipt of federal funding. Secondly, the municipal bond market continues to experience a period of stress, limiting state and local governments around the country from accessing debt financing. Should these delays continue for a prolonged period, the city's planned borrowings could be delayed. As an example, this line of credit could also be used to address an inability to execute our annual sale of the city's tax anticipation notes for Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Fund by providing short-term bridge funding. Finally, this credit facility provides more certainty to the city to financially address things that we just currently do not know. We believe it prudent to seek a line of credit proactively before we need it rather than reactively. Given the number of unknowns in the economy and overall global financial system, it is important to lock in the city's access to the debt markets now rather than later when such funding may not be available. In addition, the line of credit provides flexibility as an alternative to reliance on established reserves. Under the procedures of the authorizing ordinance, I, the city's debt manager, will be required to consult with the city's chief financial officer and the director of the city budget office prior to making any draws. In our consultation, a repayment source and repayment plan would need to be identified before making such draws. With council's approval, the debt management division will negotiate with its lending partners to establish one or more lines of credit with a total maximum amount of $100 million as soon as possible. Our expectation is to seek a commitment from the lenders for a maximum of 2 years, which should hopefully provide enough time to exit the pandemic period and the related economic effects. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Very good. And Carla, we did receive some written testimony on this, but it's my understanding that today we are not taking oral testimony, correct?
We would have if somebody had signed up, but we had no one sign up ahead of time for this item.
All right, so we do now have the capability, if people sign up by 4 p.m. the day before, people do have the ability to testify, correct?
That's correct, Mayor, and instructions are on the agenda website how to do that.
Excellent, I appreciate it. Commissioner Hardesty has a question. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I was having trouble getting unmuted as you were moving forward.
Technology.
We're all learning, and I think we're all getting a lot better at this. Thank you for the presentation. I had raised a concern that the City Council would not approve expenditure of this $100 million bond, that this would happen out of the public eye and without the City Council's okay. I don't know how that would line up. And so I'm curious as to why the City Council would not be approving the expenditure of these bonds.
Well, I think it's important that, just given the timing of it, having access to it as an emergency. If we were going to require going back to council, typically we have to get council notification of a certain amount of time before a meeting, and then is also would be dependent on council actually meeting. And so I think in light of the intent of the facility to provide emergency funding, that's why we weren't looking to include that as a provision.
I appreciate that. However, my concern is that unless the city council is leading the effort of determining what the real priorities are, those decisions will not be made in the public eye. And I have a concern, not that I have any concern about the people that are involved, but I am concerned that the right hand won't know what the left hand is doing. And to me, that does not feel like, as a elected oversight body, that we will be able to control that. Yes, we are in a pandemic. Yes, we are in an emergency. But I think all of us would be willing to have work sessions wherever we needed to have it, if it is about the future of Portland. I guess my big concern is that right now we know we have $100 million approximately coming from the federal government that no one knows what we can use it for. And so that's my big concern. And I haven't heard anything that makes me not have that concern.
This is Michelle Kirby. I'm the City Chief Financial Officer, and I'd be happy to respond to your question, Commissioner. I want to assure you that the action we're taking here with deploying the resource, there would not be decisions to purchase or support new programs or expenses that didn't already have council authorization. We're envisioning this as a tool, a cash management tool, to support circumstances where the cash liquidity is short for a short duration, and we need some cash funds that will be reimbursed in a very short period of time. So the funding, the programmatic needs and expenditures are already being approved by council through the budget process. And so that's why we felt that we could advise you on this and let you know that it's coming when we feel the need to tap into it. But it's important with cash flow that we be able to move nimbly and have flexibility. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat. As you know, we, the council, have not had an update yet on kind of where we're moving with our budget. And so my concerns are still there. I will just see if other colleagues have questions, and but my concerns still exist that a pot of potentially $100 million would be expended outside the public's eye without council oversight. That still concerns me.
And I just want to also point out that this authorizes us to make, for Matt to go out and find the line of credit with a banking institution. We would not be using it unless it would, it would be a final last resort. So it's not intended to shore up budgetary issues. It's more for cash.
So let me say again, I absolutely support getting a $100 million bond. What I'm concerned about is the oversight of the expenditure of those bonds.
Commissioner Fritz, you had a question?
I just have a comment. I thought it was the question that I asked when I was briefed on this was, is this the same 100 million as it's been estimated or guesstimated that we might get from the federal government? And the answer is no, it's not. So it's just kind of a coincidence it's the same number. At this point, I think we're all thinking that the numbers are so large and potentially overwhelming that it's hard to kind of wrap your head around them. I do appreciate. I think this is a fiscally responsible thing to do, and I appreciate everybody who's been working on it so quickly.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll just add that this is a common procedure to manage cash flow for public enterprises as well as private enterprises. We do this on a fairly regular basis. Multnomah County does this. As you know, property taxes come in during a specific time of year. But of course, you have to keep maintaining your payroll and programs and other expenditures continuously through the year. So from time to time, we'll do interbureau loans and the like. This is analogous to that. And again, I am very hawkish on the use of lines of credit, and therefore I would only accept its use in the manner that Matt and Michelle have indicated, which is to use it to manage cash flow situations as a bridge to a known source of revenue that's coming in. And so I would be supportive of this. I think there is one additional layer of transparency that could be added to this per Commissioner Hardesty's question. And that is, I would like to know when we are accessing the line of credit. We're certainly authorizing you today to go out and secure that line of credit, but I'd also like to know when we use the line of credit, when we tap into the reserve, how much we're using it for and what it's bridging towards. And so if you could please agree to that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Any further questions? All right. And Carla, there was no testimony on this item. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
All right. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, Matt, Michelle, colleagues. Next item, 271, please.
Authorize water revenue bonds to finance water system capital improvements and refund water revenue bonds.
Colleagues, the city is required by mandate from the US EPA and the Oregon Health Authority to place in service a filtration plant for the Bull Run watershed, our primary drinking water supply. This proposed legislation authorized the issuance of bonds to provide net proceeds of up to $745 million to finance a portion of the system's improvements related to the Bull Run watershed filtration project. Upon approval of this ordinance, the Portland Water Bureau and the Debt Management Division will enter into a loan agreement under the EPA's WIFIA program to lower financing costs and improve ratepayer affordability. Matt Gurok is on the line, and as is, I believe, Cecilia Hyan from the Water Bureau to answer any specific questions on this ordinance. And Cecilia, if I got your name wrong, can you correct me, please? Matt, are you still there?
Yes, sorry about that.
Did I get
again?
his name right or wrong? I'd like to make sure I pronounced it correctly.
Cecilia, are you on the line?
Hune. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so hello again, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. This is Matt Gurok, the Debt Manager in the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. The proposed legislation before you would allow the city's Debt Management Division to negotiate and enter into a loan agreement with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency under the Water Infrastructure Financing Innovation Act, otherwise referred to as WIFIA. Under the proposed legislation, water revenue bonds will be issued as a direct loan with EPA. In 2019, the city was invited to formally apply for funding under WIFIA, which offers extremely low-cost financing, even below the borrowing rates available to the tax-exempt bond market with the city's AAA water revenue bond rating. The cost of funds is based on the U.S. Treasury rates at the time of finalizing the terms of the loan, and it's worth noting that the Treasury market fluctuates daily. However, if the terms are finalized today, the city could effectively borrow at approximately 1.15% for a maximum term of 35 years. Considering the long-term trend of inflation, the city would be borrowing for free for this portion of the financing. Additionally, the WIFIA program allows the loan to be drawn over time rather than one lump sum, further lowering the interest and repayment impacts. Further, repayments can be deferred until 5 years after substantial project completion, which would coincide with 2032 under the project completion deadline of 2027. Under this timeframe, the city would see the economic stimulus of constructing the facility in the near term and payments not occurring until into the future. Upon approval, under the current schedule, Debt Management and the Portland Water Bureau will seek to finalize the terms and execute the loan agreement during the upcoming summer of 2020. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor, may I?
I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I just figured that out. Jeez. You know what I need? I need like a 21-year-old here, like looking over my shoulder at an appropriate 6-foot distance. That was the most important point, by the way, I've made. It was muted the entire time. Matt, question. I'm hearing from business owners and operators, employers, and others concerns that we are pushing forward on a very, very expensive capital project that will have an impact on rates. Is this something that we could put off?
Well, could I address that, please?
Yeah, certainly, Commissioner Fritz, and then Commissioner Hardesty has a question.
So thank you. So the council entered into a compliance agreement with the state of Oregon in 2017, and the project must be completed by 2027. So no, this is not something that we can put off. This ordinance is about getting a very low interest loan, as Matt just said, less than the rate of inflation, to be able to pay it off, or to pay a substantial portion of the costs. And I do need to mention that the WIFIA program was created in 2014 and implemented in 17 with the leadership of Senator Jeff Merkley. And the purpose was not only to accelerate investments in the nation's water infrastructure, but also to reduce ratepayer costs and create jobs. This project is estimated to create 7,500 direct jobs. And the low cost loan and the long-term repayments, as Matt said, we don't have to start repaying until 2032, and then it's 35 years, meaning we can put Oregonians back to work now and spread the cost over generations of ratepayers who will benefit from the improvements. And at this time in the COVID-19 pandemic, when so many people are losing their jobs and losing their health and losing financial security, this opportunity is more important than ever to pursue.
You sounded ready for that question, Commissioner, and I appreciate it. That was a great answer, great response. Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I've also been receiving a lot of letters from people that think the vote today is a vote that will impact their water bills immediately. And thank Commissioner Fritz for answering that question. This vote is really about receiving the grant money if the grant is awarded. And I want to be clear about that because I also still have questions about whether or not the path we're on is the right path. And I know that we'll start getting more answers as we move forward. My biggest concern is smaller cities dropping out of our water program and deciding that they're going to go their own way. If that continues to be a major issue, we may need to rethink about whether or not this project makes sense. Because as we know, if more people drop out, that will in fact raise the cost for Portlanders and other people who depend on the Bull Run. So I am very supportive of this because it is an ideal situation where we get a loan from the federal government, where it takes a very long time to pay it back. But I want to just say publicly that my vote today for this in no way should imply that I'm on board 100% with us moving full tilt ahead under this scenario. So I thank you for the presentation, and I thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for making time yesterday for us to have this conversation. And I look forward to us moving forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz made a really good point. I just want to underscore it with regard to financing. There's probably never going to be a better time in the next 10 years to be financing programs through the issuance of bonds, just by virtue of the fact that the federal government continues to push interest rates, at least short-term rates, are down to zero. It could go negative this rate. And even the long-term rates are looking pretty good right now for large capital construction projects. So it's a good time for us to be in the market looking for that kind of an instrument. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. I just love it when anybody says, Commissioner Fritz made a good point. Thank you very much, Beth. Well, it's true too, so that's always a good thing. I did want to give the opportunity if anybody has questions about the project itself. Cecilia Hune, the Water Bureau Finance Manager, and David Peter, the Water Bureau Engineering Manager, and his team are available to take questions if anybody has them, although it sounds like Commissioner Hardesty's agreeing that that's maybe a conversation for a different day.
That is where I am. I think what we're doing today is the right thing to do. But yes, we will continue this conversation for another day.
All right, very good. Is there any other questions on this particular item? Seeing none. And Carla, there's no testimony on this item?
This is the one we have 4 people waiting on the line to testify.
All right, very good. First person, please.
First person is Floyd Jones.
Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, Floyd Jones. It's disturbing that on the agenda it doesn't list that this is a $750 million water revenue bond, and that's principal only. That's plus interest. Regardless of your applying for the WIPIA, water ratepayers still have to pay this. They still have to pay this. Rates are still going to go up. This May, when you have your rate hearing, are you going to reduce water rates for the middle class who've lost their jobs, lost their homes? In 2008, during the last recession, Water Bureau employees sought and received a salary level increase while everyone else lost their homes, lost their jobs. This project should never have been approved in the first place. It's a strategy the Water Bureau uses often. They brought this to you in 2017, failed to tell you about the piping costs, which would increase it. Now, how many deaths have we experienced? How many illnesses have we experienced in the last 120 years from cryptosporidium? Well, a total of 0, because we don't have the infectious type in our watershed. The Water Bureau is always happy to first spend ratepayer dollars, increase their budget on the lower cost option, UV radiation. We spent $16 million. Same is true for the other part of this flawed rule that the Water Bureau alone, the only utility, helped to craft. Washington Park, what did they tell you? Oh, it's going to be $64 million for a tiny $13 million tank. It didn't just go up 1% or 10% or 100%, went up 300%, just like this chemical adding filtration plant is going up. That's the only thing we're going to get out of this is chemicals in our water. Chemicals. We've seen, as I've said before, this rule came about because of a catastrophic event where a filtration plant failed in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In Denver, when they had a fire, the filtration plant failed. This is not a project that we need. So come May, are we going to see a refund of our water bills? Are you going to cancel water bills for the next 3 months? You're asking that rents be canceled. Well, those rent payments go to landlords who pay mortgages that are taken over by pension systems, and then the pensioners don't get their money because the money isn't coming in. In 2004, we brought a water bond case to court, Portland Water Bureau water bond. We won it because the Water Bureau wasn't transparent in what they were going to spend the money on, and it didn't allow to bring this out to a vote. Well, even if we wanted to bring this out to a vote right now, we couldn't, right? We're all on lockdown. So there are just a million flaws to this. You need to turn this around. There are other options. The case with OHA can be renegotiated. We know the Water Bureau doesn't want to do that. The corporations are making a ton of money off of this. There are other ways that we can keep people working. This is not the way to go.
Thank you. Carla, next individual, please.
The next person is Lauren Korcher.
Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. This is Lauren Corder. Given the current COVID-19 pandemic and economic crisis of our city, state, and country, authorization of a $745 million revenue bond, water revenue bond, is inappropriate and insensitive. You are requesting the authorization of funds intended to finance capital improvement projects, most of which to fund an expensive and unnecessary water project on the backs of your constituents. Over the last month, an unprecedented number of Oregonians have experienced significant salary reductions or job loss, have filed unemployment, and simply cannot meet their basic needs, including paying that already costly water bill. Please consider, or please understand that the City of Portland is not federally mandated to treat Bull Run water with filtration. Rather, the city is mandated by the EPA to use an acceptable treatment method. Fortunately, a provision, as stated within the Oregon Health Authority's 2017 bilateral compliance agreement, the city has the opportunity to amend the current agreement when necessary. It is now necessary to amend the agreement, striking filtration as the treatment approach and adopting a less expensive option. It would be dishonorable for you to ask your constituents to pay for revenue bonds and the accrued interest to cover the unnecessary mega filtration project. Individuals and families are seriously struggling to make ends meet, and this economic hardship will undoubtedly continue for years to come. On behalf of your constituents, please reevaluate the other cost-effective treatment options, amend that bilateral compliance agreement, and then move to authorize the bonds necessary to provide fiscally responsible capital improvement projects. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carla, you said there was another individual as well?
We have two more. The next one, sure, the next one is D. White.
Good morning.
Hello, my name is Dee White. I am adamantly opposed to authorizing $745 million for a ratepayer liable bond at this time of world despair and economic collapse for an inelegant and costly water filtration project that is politically driven. Looks like the cost now is at about $1.5 billion. And Commissioner Fritz, it is incumbent on you to let us let the city know, let us know where these 7,000 jobs for this? Are you kidding me? Plans for this chemical-consuming, carbon dioxide spewing filtration plant run counter to all of the climate change policy making that you guys have been promoting and passing, and which you will continue to promote and pass after the coronavirus pandemic passes. Over 8,000 dry tons of chemicals will be trucked in and used and required per year for this filtration plant. That's not to mention the gas, including chlorine and ozone and carbon dioxide. I'm asking you today to please try and understand the science behind the cryptosporidium LT2 rule, and as well as the lead and copper rule, which we have the highest lead of any large utility in the country, and you're failing to address that. The science is critical to know before making a decision of this much consequence for the ratepayers in this depressed and stressed community. Science has been ignored and stupidly disputed to justify the need for this filtration plant, while the Water Bureau egregiously gives us false assurances that lead is not a problem in our drinking water, and this filtration plant is not going to fix the lead. This filtration plant will provide no health benefit for the ratepayer. Who exactly is benefiting from this $1.5 billion ratepayer-funded project? There are cryptosporidium LT2 alternatives that have been ignored, such as UV and ozone, like our big sister city, Seattle, built for 1/10 of the cost of this filtration plant. As Commissioner Hardesty asked, why do we need a Cadillac? We should not be in this place right now where we, the ratepayers, are staring into this bottomless cavern of debt with no way out, no alternatives, no exit strategy, and no scientific inquiry. Again, I ask, who will be benefiting from this $745 million bond? Please vote no and rethink your regressive and unkind drinking water policy.
Thank you. Next individual, please, Carla.
The next register is Jeff Knapp.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. So I want to start by just getting out of the way that I'm not disputing the requirement to meet the LT2 rule. I've seen that sometimes bandied about like, you know, that is the issue. That is not my issue. I simply don't think we should accomplish meeting that rule with skyrocketing rates, adding chemicals to the water, and doing a lot of harm to the environment in the process when there are better solutions immediately available. My follow through on this, on the filtration plant has been because I've gone from curious citizen to concerned citizen, and now I genuinely feel like I'm a whistleblower. I'm shocked at the budget rates that I'm seeing out of the Water Bureau. Last year, they raised the rates 8.7%, and looking at the Water Bureau budget, they have sustained rates for the next 5 years showing of 7.4%. I mean, those are compounding rates. I mean, you're going up faster than healthcare, and we know what a crisis that is. I wonder how many of the commissioners have looked at the Portland Water Bureau documents to realize that just on their own projections, if they stay in budget, by the time that filtration plant comes online, the typical residential water bill is going to increase over $430 a year. And again, that presumes that they stay on budget and they don't have further erosion of the wholesale user base. You know, and as far as this filtration facility, we keep talking about it as though it's just a filtration facility. I mean, it's been, you know, a narrative has been developed that's about filtration. All Portland Water Bureau presentations I see never mention all the chemicals that they have to add to this system. There's all these flocculating agents and other new chemicals that get added to the system to make it work. So while it's sold as a filtration facility, it's a chemically enabled filtration facility. The presentations and data I've seen, and I've been through a bunch of these, looking through the Portland Water Bureau documents, has it all portrayed in a very purposely skewed way. And it's sort of shocking to see, but I mean, it does make me wonder if the commissioners are sort of going, well, our experts just keep saying this is the best thing. And it kind of reminds me of the whole scenario that we watched unfold with the Boeing 737 MAX, where, you know, the company comes out and says, well, it's a very complex system, and our renowned experts have told us this is absolutely the best. We're sure it's good. And yet you can sit there and look at just the basic facts and realize that, you know, they're violating just fundamental essences of logic. I mean, if you have cheaper systems readily available to go right now. So, you know, what's cheaper than doing all these water bonds is picking a vastly cheaper system to begin with. And as far as Commissioner Fritz's argument that somehow this is a jobs program, I got to say, it really reminds me of that's a similar argument to like the Keystone XL pipeline. You know, the proponents of it will come out and tell you, well, you know, this is a jobs program, and, you know, they're only referring to whatever jobs are created during the construction phase, and during that construction phase, you know, this thing is a ton of diesel and other pollutants.
Thank you. And Carla, was there somebody else as well?
That was the last speaker.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions on this item? Any further comments? This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item is 272, please.
Authorize a 2-year lease extension with 319 Washington LLC for office space at the Spalding Building, 319 Southwest Washington Street through June 30, 2022 at an estimated cost of $75,000 for the Office of the Portland Children's Levy.
Thank you. This is, and I forgot to thank people who testified on the last item. Thank you all for your testimony. We appreciate it. Item 272 is a second reading. We've already had a presentation on this item. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciated hearing from SEIU last week. I really appreciated talking to both the children's levy folks as well as with the police and fire disability, that they are committed to making sure that the workers in their buildings will have a safe working conditions and will be able to have some certainty around their employment. We all understand that because of the emergencies that exist for space, that we need to do this extension. But I want to put on the record that we're committed to making sure the next contracts are in buildings where we can be proud of how workers are treated. I vote aye.
You Daly.
Well, my comments are very similar to Commissioner Hardesty's. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the passage of Portland's sustainable procurement policy, which was something I had started working on so long ago that I had forgotten. That was back in 2017 when safe and fair labor practices were not even part of our sustainable procurement proposal. So I want to thank Jamie Duhamel from my office for working on that, and for thank Commissioner Hardesty's office, who kind of took the ball and ran with it. The lease extensions remind us that this work isn't done, and I'm going to support these items because it's necessary that we retain office space for the Portland Children's Levy and the Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Board. That being said, I want to be clear that I strongly believe that all buildings we lease moving forward should use union contractors. And if there are loopholes in our labor peace agreement or requirements, we should move to close them. Additionally, I just want to thank SEIU for bringing this to our attention originally and ask that OMF request the owners and managers of this building to put their janitorial contracts out to bid and commit to contracting with responsible contractors. I vote aye.
Fritz?
Well, there are definitely advantages and disadvantages to going first or last on things, and it's good that we rotate to do that. So I'll just echo my colleagues' comments. Thanks to everybody who's been involved in this. I also want to thank Tim Crail, my Chief of Staff, who's been my labor liaison for over 11 years now. And Mayor, just after you voted, could I please, I forgot that the last item was a non-emergency item, and I have a few more comments to make. So if you wouldn't mind letting me do that, I'd appreciate it. On this one, I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Yes, and I always go last, so there's never anything left for me to say. And I think we're in profound agreement that we care about how people are treated in the buildings in terms of wages, benefits, health care, and other protections. And I was very pleased with the presentation we heard from the two bureaus. And as everybody is aware, this is a short-term lease, and I'm happy to support this in the short term. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Back to you, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. I do need to take the opportunity to tell people watching at home that the drinking water is safe, and that anybody, all ratepayers who are having difficulty paying their bills can contact PWB customer service, or one word, at portlandoregon.gov to defer payments. If you need to do that, we're committed to maintaining safe drinking and washing water throughout the crisis. And also, if you would like accurate information about the filtration plant, please go to portlandoregon.gov. You know, this is huge. That was huge. I mean, it's going to be huge when we vote on it next week. This is absolutely amazing that we got invited to apply for the Revere Grant. We've applied twice before. We've sought an invitation to apply twice before and didn't get it. So I do need to thank Elizabeth Edwards, our Government Relations Director, and again, Senator Jeff Merkley. I also want to thank, I'm going to do this again next week, but it deserves thanking more than often because this is really huge. Director Mike Sturr and Deputy Director Mike Gabe Solmer in the Water Bureau, Cecilia Hune, and Dave Peters, who I mentioned before. You've all worked together not only to help us to comply with federal and state mandates, but also done so while significantly reducing ratepayer costs and creating jobs. So thank you for that. And then finally, I need you to say this because I need to honor Commissioner Nick Fish, who restored confidence in the Water Bureau and who was the leader when the council decided to do the filtration plant. And so thank you, Nick, for the legacy. And thank you, Mayor, for letting me have an extra turn.
Not a problem. And Commissioner Hardesty, you had a comment? You're on mute.
Here I am. I thought I had this down pat. Mayor, I was going to wait till last week to say this, but I guess for the sake of the community members who took time to come and present their information today, I just want us to all have an open mind. What we thought we knew before the coronavirus and what we know today is radically different. I think it's not a problem to review decisions and determine whether or not those decisions are still in the best interest of Portlanders and those who will be paying for it. So while I will support this measure that allows us to accept $100 million, the conversation is not over as to whether or not we are moving in the right direction. I still need more information. And as you know, we'll be balancing this with a whole lot of recovery area activity. I don't want us to get in the habit of saying every construction project is a recovery project and is vital to our recovery. I don't believe that's so. We will have to make really hard choices moving forward. And I don't want anybody to have the impression that somehow some things are off limits. As far as I'm concerned, nothing's off limits and nothing's a guarantee at this moment. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take the opportunity to echo similar sentiments to Commissioner Hardesty. While it's true that the Bureau is responding to a federal mandate, and we're required to take some action, regardless of whether people think there's a real threat or not. The logic for building a filtration plant was that it wasn't a lot more expensive than infrared, but that has turned out not to be true. And given our current public health emergency, I am very nervous about investing huge sums of public dollars in a project that I'm not 100% confident in. So if it makes sense to support this item, but still gives us an opportunity to revisit the project, I will do that.
Very good. Thank you all. Next item is item 273. It's related to 272. It is also a second reading. Do we already do?
273. Authorize an 18-month lease extension with GVI LC, Harrison Square Owner LP, for office space at Harrison Square, 1800 Southwest 1st Avenue through April 30, 2022 at an estimated cost of $345,729 for the Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Board.
This was the twin of item 272. It's a second reading. We've heard the presentation. People have already given speeches. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Ditto what I said last time. I vote aye.
Daly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 274, please.
Appoint Julia Delgado and Dyke Dame to the Portland Housing Advisory Commission for terms to expire March 18, 2022.
Colleagues, the Portland Housing Advisory Commission is the primary forum for the discussion of housing policy, strategy, and resources for the city of Portland. PHAC members rise above their individual interests and affiliations to take a comprehensive approach to housing policy and strategy to support the unmet housing needs of all Portlanders. The appointments today fill vacancies on the commission with individuals that are committed to addressing the pressing housing issues and needs of the residents of Portland. I want to thank you, Julia and Dyke, for your willingness to serve on the Portland Housing Advisory Commission, and I look forward to your guidance as commissioners. And I believe we have Shannon Callahan with us today to intro this item. Director Callahan.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. We are very pleased that Julia and Dyke have agreed to serve on the Portland Housing Advisory Commission. Julia has spent the last 15 years working on the intersection of racial equity and housing and is one of the authors of the Racial Equity Strategy Guide that the city has adopted and committed to for community-focused work. Dyke has over 40 years of development knowledge and expertise and brings a passion and commitment to increasing minority and women apprenticeships in the trades. Their perspectives will strengthen our work as a bureau and on the Portland Housing Advisory Commission. And I'm just very pleased to present these candidates to you and ask for your support in confirming their appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions, any thoughts? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty, a second from Commissioner Daly. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Daly.
I want to thank both Julia and Dyke for volunteering their time to serve on PHAC, and in particular, just share my excitement about Julia joining, who is going to offer really valuable expertise and advocacy for Black, Indigenous, and POC communities. I've seen her in action at a Home for Everyone coordinating board, and she's going to bring excellent perspective to PHAC. And I want to also give a special thanks to Jessie Connor at the Housing Bureau for all her work with the commission. I vote aye.
Fritz.
Thank you very much to those willing to serve. Aye.
Wheeler.
I'm always appreciative when people step forward. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Dyke. I vote aye. The report is accepted and the appointments are approved. Thank you. Next up is item number 275.
Amend contract with Housing Development Center, Inc. to add $150,000 in housing investment funds to support the Risk Mitigation Pool program.
Colleagues, created back in 2005, the Risk Mitigation Pool is a valuable tool to incentivize creation and ongoing provision of permanent supportive housing as an effective housing solution serving households experiencing chronic homelessness in our communities. This amendment will provide sufficient funds for claims made to the program during fiscal 1920. The Risk Mitigation Pool is an essential resource that we'll need to maintain. We'll need to find ongoing resources to support it, particularly in line with the city and the county's commitment to drastically increasing the number of supportive housing units in our community over the next 10 years. Today, we have Director of the Housing Bureau, Shannon Callahan, and I believe also our Senior Policy Coordinator, Jennifer Chang, here to answer any questions. Director Callahan, did you have any further thoughts?
No, Mayor, Jennifer and I are just both here to answer any of the questions that you or council may have.
All right, good. Colleagues, any questions on this item? It's pretty straightforward. Seeing none. Carla, this is an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Daly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye. Sorry, was having trouble unmuting. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you all. Item 276.
Approve application under the Multiple Unit Limited Tax Exemption Program under the Inclusionary Housing Program for Modera Woodstock located at 4850 Southeast Woodstock Boulevard.
Colleagues, you're well familiar with the multi-program. With us today are Shannon Callahan again and Dory Van Bockel, the Development Incentives Program Manager for the Housing Bureau, to answer any questions about this particular program.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. This is Dory Van Bockel.
Hi, Dory.
And yes, as you know, the multi-program is one of the financial incentives provided to inclusionary housing projects choosing to make units affordable rather than paying a fee in lieu. Each application comes before council for approval. This is a mixed-use apartment building, Modera Woodstock, and they're restricting 5 of the 194 units affordable to households earning up to 60% in median family income for 99 years as part of the inclusionary housing program. They're using the reconfiguration option, meaning that there will be 1 studio and 4 4-bedroom units affordable over the 99-year period. In addition to the 10-year tax exemption provided by the multi, the project will also receive exemption of the affordable housing construction excise tax, as well as system development charges that otherwise would have been due. And we looking at the rent roll for the project of anticipated market and affordable rents, as well as the value of the exemption over that 99-year period. It's only a 10-year exemption. The difference in rents between the market and the affordable units for studios, it's just under $600 a month. And for a 4-bedroom unit, it's actually almost $1,300 a month. And yet the value of the tax exemption to the city and the other taxing jurisdictions is only about $10 a month over that time frame. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions about this particular project.
I don't see any questions on this. This is an emergency ordinance. Carla, please call the roll.
Hey, Mayor, I did have one. Sorry, Mayor, I did have one question. Am I to understand that this is 4 units out of 194 units?
It is 5 units, yes, out of 194, because they used the reconfiguration option to provide 4-bedroom units. The reconfiguration option allows for a calculation of the total bedrooms in the building, which is mostly comprised of studio units, with a handful of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom and obviously a few 4-bedroom units. So the total bedrooms are how the calculation was made for this particular project.
And the total square footage for those 4-bedroom units?
I don't have that offhand, but I'd be happy to follow up with you with that information.
Very good. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
I'm challenged by this particular proposal because I know we need 60% and under, but we're talking 5 units out of 194. I appreciate the fact that they'll be quote unquote affordable for 99 years. But I am challenged by this particular one, especially because I don't know what the square footage is, whether or not we're just trying to squeeze a lot more people into the same square footage. Did I hear you say, Mayor, that this was an emergency measure?
That's correct.
I'm going to abstain for the moment and come back based on other votes. Can I do that?
No, we need actual full votes for an emergency.
If we don't have 4 votes, it fails, and I can't do a motion for reconsideration if I vote with the majority to pass it. So, there.
These are challenging times that we're in. So I will vote no, and then I'll come back, maybe.
Daily.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how this is supposed to proceed. I was going to ask a question because it seemed like we needed to have more discussion. I am in support of this. I think it would be helpful for us in these conversations if the Bureau could very plainly share with us the total foregone revenue and the value that the city is getting from these units, or at least the value of the reduced rent. I think I share Commissioner Hardesty's concern that this doesn't seem significant for the size of the development. And it would be really useful to understand if these developers are getting more benefit than they're actually providing, or if it's the other way around. So I vote aye, but I strongly recommend that information be provided to us in detail.
Fritz.
Could I ask the city attorney if it's a motion to suspend the vote? If I can make that motion at this time?
Once the roll call is being taken, we should not. It needs to be completed.
Okay, thank you. So I'm actually really excited about this. It was reported that the lost income to the taxing jurisdictions for these 4-bedroom units was only $10 a month, or $10. It was a very small number in exchange for a absolutely huge discount on rent for units, which I don't remember another time that we've had 4-bedroom units coming in. And we all know that some communities have larger families or multi-generational. These are the kind of units that we really, really need. So I am really excited about this, and I'm going to trust the mayor to figure out well, the mayor's smiling. I think he's got it. So I'm going to vote aye because I'm so excited about this, and I'm sure that the mayor is too, but he will do the procedural thing. Aye.
Taylor.
Yeah, so just by way of context, this project is going to join 80 other private sector projects in the inclusionary housing permit approval pipeline. And that'll make a minimum of 519 units affordable in what are otherwise going to be completely market rate developments. And of course, the city will still benefit from property taxes collected on the improved value of the land during the exemption period. So I'm enthusiastically supportive of this. However, I'm going to vote no. The motion fails. Now I would like to ask my colleagues for a vote of reconsideration.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. And Robert, do I need to call the roll on the reconsideration?
Yes, sir.
Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The motion to reconsider carries. Colleagues, at this time, I'd like to amend the ordinance to remove the emergency clause. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Udaly. Any further discussion? Carla, please call the roll on the removal of the emergency clause from the ordinance.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Sorry, aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The emergency clause has now been removed. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, 277.
Amend Parks and Recreation System Development Charge Code to update the annual fee index methodology and delay indexing the charge until fiscal year 2021, 2022.
Colleagues, Portland Parks and Recreation is one of several city bureaus that assess system development charges, or SDCs, on new developments. SDCs allow the city to expand capacity of roads, sewers, water, and parks to meet the increased demand from new residents and new businesses in an area. Portland Parks uses a very specific methodology and rates approved by the council to set the rates developers ultimately end up paying. Additionally, the rates are indexed each and every fiscal year to keep pace with changes both in land acquisition as well as construction costs. The Bureau has proposed an update to the index methodology that will use what is expected to be more reliable data and reduced year-over-year volatility. Additionally, in light of the COVID-19 public health crisis, Parks and my office have proposed to hold off on the regular indexing of the fee, which was planned to take effect on July 1st for 1 year. And joining us to go into more detail on this is Parks SDC Manager Sarah Huggins. Sarah, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. My name is Sarah Huggins, and I'm the System Development Charge, or SDC, Program Manager for Portland Parks and Recreation. As you noted, the purpose of the annual fee index is for SDC fees to keep pace with the changing cost to acquire and develop parks. This ordinance, if passed, will do the following. It will modify the annual fee index methodology in our Parks SDC code to remove Multnomah County Assessor as the data input for fee index. The assessor data was used to index land acquisition costs, and recent assessor reports have indicated this data source may not be a reliable source to indicate annual change in real market values. It will change the Seattle Construction Cost Index from an annual to a 3-year moving average to smooth the changes year to year. It will also change from a 12% maximum over 2-year increase to a 6% maximum annual increase. This will also help to smooth changes from year to year. It will also remove one SDC exemption for commercial projects that don't add square footage or change use. This exemption is not needed as these projects do not pay a Parks SDC fee under today's code. Finally, if adopted, this ordinance will delay the next Parks SDC fee index for 1 year so that fees will not change on July 1st of 2020, and they will next be indexed on July 1st of 2021. This is due to the economic uncertainties with COVID-19. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Colleagues, any questions on this item? Any further discussion? Carla, there was no testimony on this item, correct?
That's correct, Mayor. Nobody registered.
All right, good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, Sarah. Next item is 278.
Vacate Southeast Yamhill Street between Southeast 102nd Avenue and Southeast Cherry Blossom Drive, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance will vacate Southeast Yamhill Street between Southeast 102nd Avenue and Southeast Cherry Blossom Drive. I believe we have Dee Walker, right-of-way agent from BBOT here. Hello.
Yes. Good morning.
And, she will give you further details. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm happy to be here today. So before you is a request to vacate Southeast Yamhill Street. The vacation was initiated by DePaul Treatment Center. The ordinance will vacate the street with a few conditions. So there'll be can we start my presentation slide? Can we get the first slide up there? There we go. Okay, and move on to the next slide. So this is kind of where we are in the world. It's just east of Mall 205. And it's an unimproved street. So right now it's just grass and weeds. Next slide. So DePaul actually owns property, all those lots on both the north and the south side of the proposed area to be vacated. Next slide. And here we are. This is a view of Yamhill Street from 102nd looking east. You can see there's a little bit of a footpath that goes through there. But this is what the street currently looks like right now. Next slide. And here's another one kind of further on, closer to Cherry Blossom Drive. So you can see that bit of a footpath. Next slide. And this is looking west. So now we're at Cherry Blossom looking on the west side of it. Next slide. So here is an overlay of, so the project is going to allow the construction of a new medical treatment facility. It will serve approximately 5,000 people annually, along with education and community space to support local families. The facility will employ approximately 176 people. And so you can see the red overlay is actually Southeast Yamhill Street. So that's the area we're looking at to be vacated. Within that street, it's a little hard to see, but kind of in the middle of that red, there is going to be a 20-foot wide sewer easement, the entire length of the street to allow for the existing sewer line that is currently there. The yellow portion on the south side, I kind of just drew that in to show where the walkway easement is going to be. So there'll be a walkway all along the south side, which will kind of make up for that footpath going through Yamhill. So there will be a walkway easement on the south side of the project going up, kind of going up north to Cherry Blossom Drive. Next slide. And this is just a kind of a different rendition, shows you what it will look like with the building. And again, the red area shows the street vacation. So there'll only be a little piece of the building that actually clips into the vacation area. Next slide. And here's what it will look like at the very end. So another condition of this street vacation is BDS required a lot consolidation, which is in the final stages currently. PBOT has received no objections to this request from anyone. The petitioner, DePaul, held 4 public meetings at 2 different neighborhood association meetings to discuss the project. They also met with the wider community stakeholders that included elected officials and organizations in the drug and alcohol treatment fields, various government departments, and they received nothing but support. So the project is a welcome to the community and will definitely benefit a lot of people. There are no known equity issues associated with this vacation. So the overall intent of the vacation is to simply support the development of the medical treatment facility. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Yeah, I knew that.
It was a test. It was just a test.
You know, I don't have any questions about the street vacation. That's pretty straightforward. I just want to say how much I appreciate this project, and it's been a hard-won project, and you've worked on it for many years, and I'm enthusiastically supportive of the city helping in any way we can. So thank you for your good work on this.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Please.
Thank you. I'm also in 100% support of this project. It's in my neck of the woods, it's in my hood, so I'm happy. But I need a more English definition of vacationing a street. What actually does that mean?
Okay, so what that means is, so the city of Portland, we don't own our streets in fee title like you would own your home. You own all the sticks in the bundle of rights. You own it in what we call fee title. ODOT actually owns all their streets in fee title, every stick in the bundle of rights. The city of Portland does not do that. We only have an easement over it. So the underlying fee, that last stick in the bundle of rights, is actually owned by the abutting property owner. And so when we take an easement for right-of-way purposes, for road purposes, we leave the property owner with that one stick in the bundle of rights. So if the street ever is not needed in the future, we actually, it's kind of like an onion with layers. We have a layer on it, and we have to remove the public's interest in the street because we dedicated it as public right. We have to remove that easement, actually vacate the public's interest, and then the reversionary right after we remove the easement goes back to the abutting property owner. Does that make sense?
Yes, let me see if I could put that in a little more plain speak. So it's not our street. We're borrowing it to help build this new medical facility. And we have had to get agreement from the people who actually own the street to allow us to make that happen. Does that make sense?
Sort of. So we got an easement from the abutting property owner, whether it was when it was a platted subdivision or a dedicated document. They granted us an easement so we could use the street. If we don't need the street, then the state statute allows for the property owner to petition the city to remove that easement so they can get their property back. So yes, we got the Yam Hill through an easement. We don't need that piece of Yam Hill anymore. So to facilitate the development, the property owner petitioned the city per the statute to see if we would vacate the public's interest. Now we are removing that easement layer from the title. And so when that easement is released, or what we call vacated, then yes, then property actually, the area reverts back to the property that it came from, and they add it onto their tax rolls, and then they start paying taxes on that street that now becomes private property again.
Thank you.
It's Commissioner. In short, it is not nearly as fun as it sounds like.
No.
All right, great. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dee, for that very good presentation, especially the photographs. That's where my parents-in-law live at Cherrywood Village on Cherry Blossom Drive. So it was nice to see it, even though I'm not allowed to go visit there anymore, at least not right now. So hi, Mom and Dad, if you're watching this on television. I did have a question. Did I have a question? No, I did have a question. In the comprehensive plan before 2016, the approval criteria were that the street is not needed for transportation and is not going to be needed in the future. Is that still basically the guideline that we go to when we look at the rights of way around the city?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, so just to further explain to folks at home, just the very term right of way means that streets are, the public has the right to go on them, but they are actually owned by the underlying properties to the sides of every street to the midline. And so we get these requests, and Dee has been doing it for as much longer than I've been on the council, to analyze, do we actually need this piece of land or not? In this case, it's really clear because there isn't a current transportation use for this platted street, nor is there in the future. So I'm very supportive.
Yes, a lot of criteria goes into it, and this is reviewed by all of the bureaus, every bureau really except police bureau. So a lot of people have reviewed it, plus neighborhood associations, all the utilities, the agencies, ODOT, TriMet. It gets reviewed by a lot of people.
Does it still have to go through the Planning and Sustainability Commission?
Yes, it did, and PSC recommended approval on February 25th.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further questions? Seeing
And
none.
this is an emergency ordinance item.
That is correct. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaley.
Thank you for the presentation and for joining us today in this somewhat awkward format. I vote aye.
Thank you.
Fritz.
I also noticed that we have Marie Wacker from DePaul on video, at least we did, who obviously went to a lot of trouble to get on video. I was intending to invite her to if she had anything to say. But Maria, I do appreciate all of the work that DePaul is doing. And again, thanks to Transportation for your work on this vacation. Aye.
Yes, I checked with Marie and Carly Harrison, and they said that they would be in the background in case anybody had questions, but told me to just take the lead.
Wheeler.
Well, thank you all, and thank you, Marie. Thank you to everybody who worked so hard to bring this to this point. There's still a lot of work to be done in the future, but I couldn't be happier to support this project at every step. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next item is 279, our last item.
Authorize the Portland Water Bureau to record capital interest as a regulated asset per Governmental Accounting Standards Board, Statement number 62, starting July 1, 2020.
Commissioner Fritz.
This is second reading.
You're right. Thank you. We've already heard a presentation on this item. Any further business on this item? Seeing none. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Mary, you just gave me a total panic, like, what are my talking points? I don't know what I'm doing here. So thanks for that. Thank you to Cecilia Hune for the Water Bureau's finance manager. She just absolutely is on top of everything. And thanks also to the debt folks in the Office of Management and Finance. Aye.
Wheeler.
Good work. Thank you all. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted and we are adjourned.
Bye, everyone.
Good job, everybody. Bye-bye.
I thank